Hi, Apartment Therapy. My name is Gail. Welcome to my 650 square foot apartment in Singapore. So if I had to pick only three words to describe my space, I would say it's definitely maximalist, granny vintage. When I have guests over, I would like them to feel like they have been given a lovely warm hug with a drink. So when I bought the apartment, it was completely kind of like rundown. So the tiles were cracking, the paint was peeling, nothing had been decorated, but the bones were good. And I think that's a really important part. So one of the things we did was to knock down the wall. And once that was gone, once you get in through the pink door, you can see like one straight line of sight all the way through to the back. Because the bathroom, there's just one bathroom for the entire flat. And with the original layout, I would have had to run out of my bedroom past the kitchen in order to enter my own bathroom. So I had the wall in between knocked down. Unfortunately, there's a giant pipe running halfway through the wall. So we managed to raise the pipe so that right now it's concealed inside a whole kind of system of tiles and shelving. The inspiration for the flat kind of came together after I saw the tile. So the idea was to kind of use pastel colors, right, with that specific kind of shade of like powder pink. So I wanted to have that kind of like throwback nostalgic feeling. A space should be set up for living in, for conversing in. There isn't really an entryway for traditional Singapore houses because the whole idea is to kind of like make people as sociable as possible. So when you come in from the common corridor, you see like the entire layout. So for me, what I really wanted was a kind of conversation starter. So I've got my swing, right, instead of furniture or a sensible sofa. But for me, it's a delightful thing because it reminds me of my childhood. My grandma had one. And the little cushions on the swing are basically like little replicas of Singaporean candies and cookies and sweets. For me, what I always wanted was a kind of like home library. So I wanted it to evoke very specifically like academic references. So I was very pleased with how it all came together. I found this lovely wallpaper from Chasing Wallpaper. If you go close up, you can see that it's actually got prints of like New England colleges, right? So that reminds me of where I went to school. And the color scheme is quite masculine, I would say. The name of the paint is Bachelor's Pad, which is, I think, perfect. So in my living room, I think like my favorite thing might actually be my folding screen. So I got this when I was a graduate student in Virginia. So I found it in a thrift store and I had to borrow a friend's car to cart it all the way back home. So I love it because it's basically like a reminder of my Asian roots. So after you walk past the swing, the first thing you'll see is the Singer machine that I've got. And that to me was like a beautiful memory because it was the first ever thing I can genuinely say I thrifted. My mom found a mini Singer machine to go with the big one. So now we've got Twiddledum and Twiddledee in the house. Many of the objects here have deep personal significance to me. So for example, the very large old school weighing scale I have in the corner is quite literally old school because it came from my grandfather's school. He was a principal. I've got many mementos from students, mementos from my uncle who was a great Civil War buff, and I think that's just a wonderful kind of way to add to the intangible coziness of a home. To confess, I don't cook. So my kitchen, if anything, is a place to kind of assemble food. And for me, it's also like a little museum, a gallery of like my personal things. So in a sense, it's an extension of the rest of the flat. One of the most important, I think, like design influences was this particular kitchen I found on the Devol Kitchen's website. And there was a beautiful chandelier in the kitchen. And I was just so taken by that because I thought the kitchen is such a domestic, practical space. Why not bring something that's absolutely impractical and luxurious into it? Another of my favorite references, which is Whistler's Peacock Room. I used the color scheme of the Peacock Room and kind of like dialed it down a little bit. But then I found these amazing like Drew Barrymore bar stools, which have velvet on them, but they also have like pheasants. So to me, my pheasants on that bar stool were a kind of like pale imitation of Whistler's like peacocks. So the green tiles are ventilation blocks. They're a fairly standard Southeast Asian feature. And they're usually found on the exterior walls of homes to let the fresh air in while also giving some privacy. To me, I think that brings a lovely architectural feature into the home that's not commonly found indoors. So I like to match the things on display in each room to the functions of that room. So in the kitchen, you can see quite a lot of Southeast Asian kitchen-related, cooking-related items. So we've got what we call the Peranakan tingkats. So they're like little layered containers. So I think you asked me like what my biggest indulgence was. I think the smack has to be it. And when I was shopping for one, there was one left in the whole of Singapore, and her name is Smurfette. I do love that my friends actively coordinate their outfits when they visit. So like they will color match my kitchen and specifically to Smurfette. When I bought the flat, the bedroom was just this lovely kind of white box. So it was a great way to kind of just like do whatever I wanted. Even before I had a flat, I knew that I wanted this particular floral wallpaper from Drew Barrymore's Flower Home collection, which is at Walmart. I didn't want something that was excessively white and calming because that's just not my style. So I wanted that kind of element of pattern play to it. The house itself also didn't come with a storeroom. So a lot of the storage had to be kind of like bought in the form of portable furniture. So we've got a giant kind of wall of like PAX wardrobe. So it's the 58 centimeter deep ones. I've also got a fairly large sideboard for putting all the kind of like bits and bobs and all the extra bedding and toweling. That also doubles up as a bit of a display space. So I use it to store things that are kind of like closet related. I particularly like that it's small actually, because I think that a big bedroom, there's too much empty space. Whereas I think in a bedroom, it's quite nice to feel cocooned in, and that makes it feel a bit more cozy. It's like a weighted blanket for the soul. So like in Singapore, ceiling fans like this are actually kind of very out of date, but they're the exact replica of the ones I had as a child. So I think they're great. They're very practical because obviously they ventilate without the need for air conditioning. But I've also made it so that the light bulbs in them are color changing. So the vibe can change depending on the situation and the atmosphere. For a lot of people, home is, I think, a place to rest. For myself, it was a little bit different because having first grown up and spent my whole childhood in Singapore, sharing a place with my parents, even though I had my own room, I always had to follow someone else's design choices, even though I love my mom. So for me, home was a space of freedom, partly with adulting and the responsibility of a mortgage. There also comes the liberation of being able to make your own design choices. So for me, this place is a place to kind of experiment with, right? A place to have fun, a place to just be purely myself. And I think that to me is incredibly precious.